Double Cross, and Other Skills I Learned as a Super Spy by Jackson Pierce. Chapter 9. Clatterbuck was Beatrix and Ben's uncle. He didn't look impressive, but I opted to believe that he was. For all I knew, he was one of those assassin-type guys who could kill me with his pinky or something. Those guys always looked weird. The suit lady didn't introduce herself, so it wasn't until they'd escorted me through the waterlogged hallway and back to her office that I read her name on the door. Pamela Oleander, Director of Operations. The League's director, its version of SRS's Dr. Fishburne, so double terrifying. Oleander sat behind her desk, where Clatterbuck had just set 3 boxes of pizza. Oleander opened up the nearest box, and steam rose from it. She lifted a slice and took a bite, dodging a few drops of grease just before they hit her pantsuit. Clatterbuck took the seat beside me and reached forward to steal a slice for himself. He mangled it into a lump of cheese and dough as he tried to open a can of soda without putting the pizza down. Oleander chewed for a few moments before speaking. "Have a slice, Mr." She waited for me to fill in my name. "Jordan, Hale Jordan," I said. The League had to know my parents. I mean, everyone in the spy game had heard of Katie and Joseph Jordan. Maybe learning that I was a Jordan too would strike a little fear in their hearts. Unfortunately, Oleander didn't react to the name. She just nodded and pushed the pizza box closer to me. I tensed the muscles in my stomach to keep it from growling. My vending machine breakfast had been ages ago, and no way was I taking any food from the League. It almost definitely had a sleeper drug in it. Oleander shrugged when it became clear I wasn't taking a slice. "Mr. Jordan, let's be clear. I'm not offering you pizza after you flooded my building just to be nice. I'm doing it because I want your help." I scoffed, but Oleander ignored it. She put her pizza down and leaned over the desk, a little, keeping her eyes hard on mine. "I've heard of Project Ground Cover, but I don't know what it entails. I want you to tell me." I worked hard to look blank. I'd done well in advanced interrogation techniques and body language analysis, so I knew Oleander was already making mental notes, working out what would make me crack. Best to give her as little information as possible. "You think I'll trade you information for some pizza? Not a chance. You have 2 of our agents," I said coolly. "Give them back and we'll discuss ground cover." "I don't have them," Oleander said. "I don't believe you," I answered. Oleander sighed and put her piece of pizza down. "Mr. Jordan, even if I wanted to kidnap SRS agents, how would I go about it? Look around. Does this look like an elite spy agency to you? There's not a single field agent in this place, much less someone with the skill to take out 2 SRS agents. The government cut back our funding ages ago when we couldn't stop SRS." I frowned. The League had government funding? That didn't make sense. SRS was the government organization. The League was the criminal agency. Why would criminals have government funding? Oleander saw my hesitation and stopped on her way to grabbing another slice of pizza. She gave me a sort of pitying look. "Wait, that surprises you, doesn't it?" "I bet everything I'm saying surprises you. You've always been told that SRS are the good guys, that the League are the bad guys, right? Of course you have." I didn't answer. "And you've probably been told we're huge and powerful and out to get you." I still didn't answer, but I guess I didn't need to. Oleander rose. "Come with me," she said. With Clatterbuck on my heels, Oleander walked me down the hall, past people mopping out their offices, and to the stairwell. She fumbled with a massive ring of keys that clinked together like an instrument as we walked up a flight of stairs to the very door I'd tried to open earlier. Oleander gave me a quick look and inserted a thick brass key into the lock, turning it. The smell of age swept over me, old paper and blankets and stale bread. The floor was completely dark. Oleander stepped in first, the clack of her heels echoing across the room. She reached towards the wall and flicked on the lights. They protested, flickering and snapping as one by one they slowly lit. "This was the tech floor, I think," Oleander said. "No, this was the control deck," Clatterbook said rather somberly, running a finger across a dust-caked desk. "Sorry," Oleander answered. Then to me she said, "It was before my time. I didn't take over until after they'd pretty much shut everything down." I barely heard this, too shocked by what I saw. A control deck similar to the one we had in SRS, dozens of desks, a gigantic screen, maps on the walls, speakers, a bridge lifted slightly above the rest of the room, like a stage, for the mission commander to pace on. Except everything in the room was wrong. It was old. The desks were empty, stripped of computers save a few yellowy gray monitors. The speakers on the walls were massive and square. Even the maps were wrong. Countries and territories I'd memorized when I was 9 were drawn in spots they no longer existed. It looked haunted, like a corpse of a room instead of a place where real people worked. "Don't fall for it. They made it look old. Nothing an effects team couldn't pull off while you were in Oleander's office." "We're broken, Mr. Jordan. We're not powerful. We haven't kidnapped your agents, and moreover, we're not the bad guys. SRS is the place with the high-end technology, with agents all over the world. I know they've convinced you that they're the secret government agency, but, well, it's not true. They lied." "You're saying that SRS managed to trick hundreds of agents, support staff, and their families into working for the wrong team? That's stupid," I snapped. "That's genius," Oleander said steadily. "And furthermore, these agents who are missing, look at the League, and then look at SRS. Which organization do you think has the resources to make 2 people vanish?" "Are you saying SRS kidnapped their own agents?" "I'm saying that's a lot more likely than us being behind it," Oleander said coolly. She retreated from the room, flicking the lights off as she went. One sparked as the fluorescent bulb blew. "We can continue the tour if you want. 79 floors total. I'll show you every one if that makes you believe me." "It won't," I scoffed. Oleander frowned at me. Clatterbook looked back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. "Well then, Mr. Jordan," Oleander finally said, "whatever will we do with you?" I didn't realize it at the time, but Oleander was asking a real question. Whatever would they do with me? Clatterbook reported that the intake cells, they did have them after all, which made me feel pretty smug, were full of storage boxes. Finally, Oleander frowned and rapped a pin against her lips. "What's in your office, Clatterbook?" A chair, a desk, a bobblehead dog, a dead houseplant." "I mean that he can steal or read or report back to SRS," Oleander said testily. "Oh, nothing. Everything's on Creevy's been locked up," Clatterbook answered. I didn't know who Creevy was, but I didn't want to let them in on the fact, so I stared at the wet floor like it was practically interesting. "All right," Oleander nodded. "We'll lock him in your office until he tells us about ground cover." "And if I never do?" I asked, folding my arms. I was trying to look menacing, but given the soaked SRS uniform, I suspected I looked more like a giant wet raisin. Oleander gave me a pitying look. "You'll talk, eventually." "Why would I do that?" "Because," Oleander answered as she walked away, "you'll realize I'm telling the truth." Truth. She couldn't be. There was no way. And yet, that word shone like a beacon in my head, guiding me towards the last time I'd heard it. My parents talking in the kitchen, my mom's voice on the edge of tears. We pretend like we don't know the truth. Could this be the truth my parents were talking about? Clatterbook warily escorted me to his office, which was on the same floor as the gym and tucked away in a corner. As such, it had been spared the sprinklers on the floor above. Such being basement level, it didn't have a window, but he'd tacked a few dozen tropical calendar pictures to the back wall, which worked as a surprisingly decent substitute. Tropical pictures aside, the room looked like it belonged to a comic book illustrator or maybe a zombie movie aficionado. There were vintage movie posters on the wall by the door and little figurines on every flat surface. Toy cars still in boxes and pictures of him with everyone from the Queen of England to that guy from the action movies. I couldn't help but think this office rivaled Kennedy's bedroom in terms of colors per square foot. And it didn't look as evil as I'd expected for the League. Clatterbook gave me a sort of smile and turned to go, yanking a baseball player bobblehead off a shelf and tucking it safely into his pocket as he went. As soon as the door clicked, I sighed and collapsed into his desk chair, wiggling around as the edges of the duct tape covering the cushion poked me. My mind felt crowded, too many thoughts bumping into one another. SR agents were taught to trust our guts. It was the very first thing we learned when we started training at 7 years old. Go with your first instinct and never look back. I'd always liked that, the idea that the right thing, the ground truth, was already deep inside us, and we just needed to listen to it. It was the lesson that convinced me not to give up when training got terrible, when Walter got muscles, when Kennedy became the best gymnast at SRS. Because I always knew that deep down, the true thing in me was a spy, through and through, no matter how slowly I ran a mile. But now, even while my head was shouting that Oleander must be lying, that the League was tricking me, the deep true thing was whispering, chanting over and over, truth, truth, truth. Find the truth.